was there a lot of hype? Was there a lot of excitement? And was some of the aim, obviously, of being an observer to try and compare the hype, the pre-hype or the pre-campaign, the campaigning with the actual turnout scenario?
Yeah.
What did that look like for you guys? And is this, am I right in terms of asking that particular question of, do observers try to see the hype meet up with the actual turnout of voters?
Yeah, I think I'll just start by giving a bit of context in terms of not the work that the NID does per se, but what we did in relation to the elections. So in 2024, we deployed over 150 election observers, and we not only deployed, but we also trained them and provide them with merchandise, with observation T-shirts, caps, and of course the necessary training as well as deployment stipends. And we did that in partnership with the Hans Seidel Foundation as well as the Democracy Works Foundation. And then last year, we aimed to do sort of the exact same thing, but with a smaller cohort of observers. So we did so with, I believe, we're targeting 90 observers, and we ended around 62 observers that we ultimately deployed and trained. And we did that in partnership with the Embassy of Switzerland in South Africa, as well as the Delegation for Flanders in Southern Africa, and then the Hans Seidel Foundation. So in a nutshell, that is what we set out to do. That was our target. I think you're right to ask a question, and a comparative question, no less, because the hype in 2024 was a lot. There was a lot of hype, and I think that is particularly because a lot of individuals feel like that is the only election that matters. I don't even think majority of the electorate is aware of regional and local authority elections. So not only was there a lot of hype, but there was a lot of youth participation and voter participation. People were actively involved and wanted to know, okay, where do I get registered? Where do I go and vote? Where is my deployment stations? Who are the presidential candidates? And who exactly am I going to vote for? And they were deeply engaged, not only in person, but also on social media. There was a lot of commentary. Last year's one was the complete opposite of that. Genuinely, it was even a struggle to secure election observers, even just to secure individuals that were going to observe. And not only that, but there were no, according to our observation, there were no international observers at all. Not even SADC was present to observe these elections. So I think that is also testament to the amount of buy-in that we have for regional and local authority elections. But in terms of observation, even the day that I went to go and vote, I was anticipating that someone else was busy running as councillor in my constituency, a particular lady, and I was looking forward to go and vote for her, or I had faith that she was the candidate that I was going to go vote for. And when we came to the polling station, she wasn't there, she wasn't on the ballot. And so I think it's also a clear indication of just miseducation or the lack of voter education at all, because not only did we not know who our candidates were, we did not know where to vote. There was a lot of there was confusion about voter registration, and whether or not that voter's card is valid in your constituency. So there was a lot going on, and particularly marked by miseducation. But there was no, at least from what we observed, there was no hype. The voter turnout was quite low. And the individuals that did come out were a lot older. And I don't even think that they were voting.
Was the individuals in terms of the candidates?
The electorates.
The electorates.
The electorates were they were a lot older, and they were coming out in twos, in groups of twos.
That's what I also
threes.
observed. Because the constituency I had was, or that I stay in, is Windhoek East. This one where we're recording in. And the unfortunate scenario was that the turnout was also, it came in in trips. One family car, the hype not being similar to 2024's hype, which obviously meant new administration, new ministers, and that. Now I'm going to ask this question a little bit later, in terms of also that scenario, in terms of looking at whose response, who do you feel as NID should the voter education responsibility fall on? I have a particular view myself. But we can obviously sort of have a little bit of a slight debate. Not debate. I don't like debates. But when we look at this conversation, obviously, of the education element, I'm going to ask it here, and also at the back end. But was there really a lack of education specifically on the voter side that you guys observed during the course of last year's election day? Or was it probably the other question that's also in our discussion for today, the apathy component that literally blatantly came through?
Yeah.
And I'm asking this primarily because of a lot of the dissatisfaction that the international observer groups observed in the 2024 presidential. Just to let you guys know, obviously we had the long lines.
Yeah.
We had the
lack of ballot papers.
The lack of ballot papers.
Voter verifiers.
The voter
list goes on.
The
extended times.
That too. Yeah. The single or one voting booth elements.
Yeah.
The polling station shopping that took place, the long queues,
the lack of polling stations,
all those particular things were contained in 3 observer mission reports. That's now SADC, AU, and there was another African one. The guys that had the highly publicized, press conference at
Mercure, yes,
in 2024, and
that was AU.
No, it was all 3.
Was it all 3? They had it together.
Yeah, there was a third African one. I keep forgetting the name, but they also had like former diplomats and African politicians as leading that, because the 3 of them moved together. The important one.
Was it Echo?
No, it wasn't. Yeah, they have it's a AE something, and the one that I don't know if they were here was obviously EU one. I don't know.
EU was observing, both in last year and in 2024.
So when we look at obviously the interest in terms of Namibia's political stability, Namibia's ability to select and elect every time new politicians, whether it be local or national, the particular argument that had permeated through 2025 was voter education. I saw that some journalists tried to ask the question back at the first announcement before the results in last year. The voter education, should ECN be fully responsible? Now, I'll ask it still later on. Don't worry, guys. But do we really think that the electorate was really interested in this local authority and this local authority elections?
Yeah, I think Val can speak on voter apathy. I'll touch on voter education because I'm more familiar with that.
Yeah.
In the office just before we came here, we're speaking about elections and just several activities that we'd like to roll out. And we, of course, as the NID, were speaking about voter education. And then I asked, well, is it really that the electorate is not educated on why it's important to vote and the branches of government and all of that, or is it that they're just so inundated by all of the socioeconomic issues that they could care less to just go out and vote? Because I'm a single mother of 4 and I'm a security guard and I get paid below minimum wage and I need to feed 5 kids. So how could you
said 4? Where's the first kid?
I don't know, my auntie's kid, because there's always kids and it's extended family and it's I could really care less about who's the next candidate or councillor or president, because I am, I'm just so bombarded by all of these things and all of these responsibilities that I need to take care of. So I think one of the reasons why voter education doesn't necessarily translate, and that is also last year we did voter education, we do voter education and civic education every year, and one of the things that we realize, especially for the schools in Katutura that we majority of the time target, is that a lot of those kids are hungry, and unless we come with food, unless we come with active and fun icebreakers.
But it firstly is a food element.
It's a food element.
It's a hunger element.
You need to go with food, or else they're not gonna stay, and when they do stay, they're not gonna be engaged. So you do need to feed these kids, and if that is already on a very rudimentary level, then what about adults? Why would they care to vote if their basic human needs are not even being, addressed? So I think that's the first thing, is that yes, we obviously need more civic and voter education, and individuals need to understand why it's important to vote. But if hunger is there, and if like everything is just marked by poverty and marginalization and people are just disenfranchised, then I do not see why they would even care to go and vote. But I also feel like the concept of democracy doesn't fully translate. And I think like 2 years back or so, the 29ers had a panel discussion and was focusing on voter apathy. And it's like this idea that democracy is a one-size-fits-all thing. And it's like, okay, how do we create a version of democracy that speaks to Africa and speaks to to the African context and African countries? And unless we do that and like we really internalize all of this Western concepts and make them our own and understand, okay, in order for democracy to work in Africa, maybe we need to address socioeconomic issues, maybe we need to address housing, whatever it may be, sanitation, all of this other like low hanging fruits.
Yeah, I'm also starting to be annoyed by that phrase because people would use the term low hanging and then we can see the massive issue to achieve the low hanging. For example, the obviously being that in some cases we need the right local authority councillors to actually pass a budget for the community that they represent to actually see the change that the community supposedly voted for or wants. One of that obviously has been the concerns coming through from, was it Rundu or Katima last year, where the Minister Sankwasa went and we've got a term here at Eagle FM known as Sankwasanized, the council, but still staying on the apathy point because you highlighted the particular voter motivation element. On the apathy scenario, since you were an observer, how does that primarily also fit into what Jacinta now just highlighted?
Yeah, I think, like Jacinta said, for me to want to actually show up at the polling station, I should be motivated. Why am I there in the first place? So as a young person, for example, and I always like to give this example, if you want a young voter, for example, to show up at the polling station, take away something that actually matters to them. At this moment, I don't think, of course, not the youth unemployment can be one of them, but like if you take away things like, let's say, we have countries that cut social media, for example, internet, that can be like a provoking factor to actually push these young people to, not that it should be done, I'm just saying there should be a motivation. There should be a motivation, something that actually hurts them most to want to come up with change or to want to change the status quo. And honestly, let's also maybe just look at it or generalize it that local authority, like throughout history, haven't actually have the highest voter turnout. So maybe we shouldn't break our necks around the fact that we didn't have such a high turnout. But that's also the excuse.
Because I want to share some facts from you guys, just to put in context what your report also highlighted. They broke up the stats in terms of the voter numbers, but we all know that we literally had like something like 1.6 million voters that could participate. For the regional authority, 609 out of that 1.6, which is almost 1.7 million, voted. So that's less than 50% already. For the was it the local authority? It was even less. We had 400 and something that could vote and participate, because obviously where you're cordoned off in the constituency, and 200 and something participated.
Sure. And isn't that sad? Because these are the elections that are about service delivery.
Exactly.
Like this is your sanitation, your local sanitation, your educate, like where your kids go to school, your electricity, like all of these things.
Where you pay your rates and lights for.
All of that. Yeah. These are the elections that matter, and yet individuals are so not interested. So
maybe then the question should be, why are we not interested? Maybe that should be.
Because we are hungry.
Yeah. It's not a matter of concern to us now.
Now, it also puts a light specifically on this particular elections, because I think you guys would have also observed some people literally took the voting day as a holiday.
Yes.
Yeah.
I saw so many people just chilling at home, specifically.
The mall was
at
full.
the mall, because the malls were full.
Yeah.
And obviously, for the presidential elections, what I observed in 2024 was that we had the malls, which are the retail businesses, literally gave the people like half day off. They could close up shop at like 1 or 2, and then the people could go home. Now, obviously, the contingent of people that work in that sector is not like the overwhelming majority that you would need to be free to go home.
Yeah.
These would be your government officials who were literally off for that day, and much of the other private sector elements. Now, there is a little bit of a weird scenario, because many people, what I also observed was that many people was like, okay, we went through presidential, why are we voting again for 2025, and who are the people we're voting for? Now, this is where the particular interest for, and not about voter education, but I'm going to ask this question now, since we're on that subject, the onus of who should take, not the fault, but more the responsibility, because the elections are there permanently. You know, we go through these cycles, 5-year cycles. Who should play a greater role in sensitizing the electorate about the local authority and regional elections, since this is the elections that actually provide services?
Yeah.
And the second part of the question is, shouldn't these elections come before the presidential, so that we can sort out technically what the needs of people are versus the political aspirations of parties, which is getting a president into the state house and a majority parliamentary representation? So those are the two questions. They're one question. Should we swap them around? And I'm just asking you to sort of like play like a wish list scenario with that swapping. And the first one being, who should actually take responsibility for voter education and voter motivation? Because the apathy is the opposite of the motivation.
Yeah, I mean, based off our voter education sessions, the obvious answer is obviously ECN. That is what we teach our students, is that the ECN is responsible not only for voter education, but like for conducting the elections, for making sure that they run smoothly, all of those principles that are tied to an election, fair, credible, transparent, all of that. So the obvious answer is the ECN. But
since they've been,
because I'm going to
say that has been the case, and there's a lot of shortcomings thereof. I mean, I would love to say civil society, but I know that civil society is severely underfunded. And so I think the responsibility or the onus is on all of us to educate ourselves and to educate each other. But then the question is, how many of us have the privilege to even begin to educate ourselves?
And the will.
And the will, you know, even like just the mental bandwidth. Like, how many of us have finished school, have matric, have gone to university? Like, how many of us have that privilege in a country like Namibia? So obviously, you know, I am my brother's keeper, and the responsibilities on all of us to educate ourselves and to educate each other. But I do not see how that is, and I feel like that's also like a very but like, I feel like it's very idyllic to think that that would be the case, because that is an ideal world, that the responsibility of voter education is on all of us, and we are all holding each other accountable. But right now, obviously that cannot be the case. We're going through so many issues that, like, really, and elections is the last thing on the average Namibian's mind. They are worried about bread and butter issues. And I think what doesn't help is that a lot of these politicians or councillors or individuals that are choosing to pursue politics is that they're doing it for their own personal gain and benefits, and not because they genuinely feel like they can contribute in a meaningful manner to their communities or to the people that they claim to serve. They're just doing it because I want to be a politician and I drive a Mercedes-Benz and be like on a government salary, and it's not for the right reasons. And I think because of that, not all of them are even educated to carry out those roles in the first place.
So I want to sort of like bring an extra dimension to that first part of that question, being the responsibility. Should we, since, because you already gave the answer already, should it not be the responsibility of the political parties then to actually take up the responsibility of voter education, since it's for their gain? It's not the electorate gaining a favorable position, because local and regional authorities is all about service provision and who can win the most votes to be able to be in the pound seat to dispense said services. Should it not then fall on their responsibility, because ECN is also responsible for the same political parties?
Yeah.
It's another particular dimension to look at, because if you look at who benefits, like you highlighted, the ideal world is for us, the electorate, to benefit, the ordinary person, man and woman. But then the only people who actually benefit financially, being they get the council seats, they get paid for all those particular, are the political parties. Shouldn't they take the responsibility for this? Probably.
But then that would require us to change the whole structure of the role of ECN then, because and maybe we'll end up then it's a situation where we might end up with political parties weaponizing the whole.
I was gonna say, like, where do you draw the line between voter education now just playing propaganda? Yes. Like, where do you draw that line? And I personally, I don't even agree with that entire idea of political parties. If I'm in the questions, when you like preemptively send the questions, you said something like about the winning side, now that like the winning side has been determined. And I think that's like the thing that I hate about politics, is that it's so divisive. It's so competitive, and it's like, don't we all win? Like, if democracy works and we like elect someone that is worthy of being elected in the first place, don't we all win when we all receive the services that we're out to receive, when like our education system is functional, when we have like services that are delivered on time? Don't we all win? But right now we are just all pinned against each other, and it's like, oh, it's your side that is messing up. And it's
so then if it's then the responsibility of ECN, then that can ease the tension.
Okay.
So you just put the drop of neutrality.
But still, there's an element that is benefiting. It's not ECN benefiting, it's not the voters benefiting, it's the political parties. Because one of the biggest concerns of sort of like, because I'm also giving you now a little bit of, two scenarios. For example, here in the Windhoek Council, we saw slow traction. You guys remember since 2020, the COVID year, heading into this direction after that, elections ended, we had these coalition political parties, and there was slow traction in new ideas, new economic ideas to advance, things and development in the outskirts of Windhoek, and also to bring the services to many needed sites. And obviously we had the highly publicized, the debt collection activities of 2021, 2022. And then here from 2023, 2024, we start seeing like, as the seat of mayor is rotating, you now start seeing how the party politics is literally playing out. I bring in another constituency, another local authority, here 90 kilometers, Riebos. Sometimes I ask people who still live there, like family members or people that I know, how's the service delivery for you guys there? Just on a basic level, as a consumer, as a user of the service. They would highlight, this is not being supplied.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Once in a year, the town gets completely cut off, even though you pay your water and electricity bill. So you ask questions about, what is the level of, what they call that, administration, for example. Now, at the helm of that, you have the same entity that has to take responsibility. Who are these councillors, and actually what do they do? Because remember, they get paid,
and they go through training, and
they obviously are the ones that campaign for said votes for them to enjoy or to reach that particular status. So that's where I keep emphasizing on this question: shouldn't it be the political parties then that have to play a greater role, even though you might not like the competitive element associated to it? But shouldn't they play a greater role in ensuring that the people they are campaigning for turns up in numbers, even though they might win a landslide vote? Sure. There's always that particular anomaly. But shouldn't they take the major responsibility for this? Because if we still put this at the ECN, from what I could look at the body language of the ECN commissioners, that at the end of the Wednesday night, is like, they didn't know how to actually address. The question was asked, how much was spent on voter education? I think it was like in the 20s or the 10 million. It was a 10 million or slightly higher. And it still doesn't answer the question of what you guys answered a little bit earlier. How do you translate the training, the education into boots on the ground?
Yeah, tangible change.
Seeing the voters show up. Because if you see 50-year-olds, 45-year-olds, 65-year-olds, 75-year-olds show up, one by one, two by two, that means there's only a specific element of the population that understands the value of this election.
Yeah, and that's also just because it has been engraved in them. Those are people that are coming like from apartheid and colonialism and like all of those.
And they understand the value of voting because they know they're making change. So, still, once again, just that two-part point. Shouldn't it still be the parties that have to play a greater role and the associations now? Because there were so many of them.
Yeah.
And then secondly, also looking at the way forward, because people keep asking about technology, and we went back to this paper-based system again. So just through insights on what you guys look at that responsibility component.
Yeah, for responsibility, I really still do not think it should be political parties. And I will give the example of the 2024 elections. A lot of political parties had a lot of money, and a lot of them were trying to incentivize voters, you know.
Okay, so it was almost on the verge of being like buying votes.
And it felt like they were buying votes. But that's the thing. Like, I think the youth is we are going through so much and we're so troubled.
Take that opportunity.
If I'm going to Senoma Stadium for a Coke and a broodje, I'm going to do that, you know.
And a t-shirt and a cap.
That's what I'm going to do. If I'm going to go watch X perform, then I'm going to do that because I am so tired and it's hot and we're probably cooking with fire back home and there's nothing there. So let me just go and watch. And if this political party wants me to vote for them, I will vote because, you know, I attended their rally. But I just feel like at this point, people are just buying votes because everyone is so, I feel, shock and awe.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like everyone is just we're just zombies. And we're just so troubled by all of these bills and responsibilities.
Yeah.
At this point, give me a broodje and I will go and vote.
They know because then they know which part of you they
and usually they just go there to Katutura. They go there to the individuals that are marginalized and disenfranchised and they have big rallies there and they know that people are just going to show up for food and the moment you feed them, they're going to go to the polls and the party colors or that party, I don't know, insignia is going to resonate with them because you fed them and then they're going to vote. So I don't trust that responsibility should be on political parties. But then if it's going to be on the ECN, I think we need a lot of reform in the ECN. They genuinely need to understand what it is their mandate is and how do we carry that out. And I mean, of course, the organizations like the NID and civil society, that is always happy to assist, you know, the ECN and to collaborate with them. And we've been strong collaborators of the ECN for such a long time. But clearly, we need an intervention and something needs to work because it has not been working. And you were saying something about the electoral cycle, but a lot of people don't even know that it's a cycle.
That's the biggest concern. Because remember, on the education point of things, you sometimes can see how people feel disconnected. Even if you look at, for example, there was the hype of 2024 that I asked at the start. And then in 2025, people were asking the question, we've got another election? Because even here at radio, at Eagle FM, we highlighted it for the whole of last year as a sensitizing to let people know, listen, there's another elections coming and there's going to be pertinent questions. But in many scenarios, the campaigning was a big issue, meaning I didn't see any campaigning on this side of Windhoek.
No, but in Katutura,
it wasn't that much.
It was just posters. There were a lot of posters in Katutura.
So even from when you guys were also observers before the observation period, the campaigning was also
very weak.
In comparison.
And because even in 2020, during that COVID year, people were literally campaigning, but predominantly they had their little rallies. There was obviously the very famous one of the situation that happened in Okahangia. I won't mention names because of some sort of language that was used, the competitive element, but the particular hype also led to who the candidates were. Now, I'll highlight this once again because it's an observation that I saw. For my constituency, because I was limited to it, where I can vote, and even as a journalist, I could only move there versus the movement I could enjoy during the presidential. Was I saw there were only 3 candidates out of the massive menu of associations and parties that were supposedly registered. that obviously meant that certain voters were automatically also just locked out of options.
Yeah.
Like you also saw with your Windhoek West.
She wasn't even on the ballot, but
But
she
this
was
is
actively campaigning
as
a candidate for my constituency, which
So-
is Windhoek West.
yeah. So when you look at scenarios like that as well, this obviously means that there's also a huge education element with the parties, right? Can we agree that there's also an education element there?
Miseducation,
With the parties,
yes,
yeah.
and lack of education.
Yeah, because I was going to be on the lack of on the lack side. So highlighting from that, have you guys also dealt with the political parties in terms of education, engagements, seminars, and those formats?
We previously used to, even before my time at the NID, we had political party workshops, where we'd bring all the political parties together, and teach them, not even teach them, but just capacitate them on areas that they identify. Because that's always our approach. The target group knows best as to what they want to be addressed or to be workshopped on.
Yeah.
So we have worked with political parties in the past, but right now there isn't much donors and partners are not necessarily into,
or they're not eager.
They're not eager to work with or workshop political parties. So it's more so workshopping the ECN on recommendations, or workshopping councillors, the councillors that are sworn in.
Versus a pre-elections kind of. Yeah, okay.
So that is more, it's more post-elections now.
Was it probably based upon a scenario that in the event that if specifically, let's say party A or party B, they are not successful on their campaigning or in their elections run, that they would throw fault at you guys? Was that some of the concerns, or was it just something else completely?
I really would not know, because that was before our time.
Yeah.
But I know that we did work and workshop political parties, but that is no longer the case. So it's more post-elections, election recommendations, and how do you, I don't know, address those recommendations, and how do we ultimately implement them?
Yeah. Now we've basically sort of covered most of the particular questions I've asked.
But we didn't address which elections can we maybe have first?
Swap.
That particular question. Yeah. So starting with you, Valentina.
Yeah, but okay. We can maybe we identified the few reasons that maybe the voter turnout was low because of, first of all, the lack of campaigning from the political parties.
Yeah.
Then the lack of voter education, of course, and then the last, which I think is important, is the type of elections also. But then, has it been done before where?
No, it's
that's a hypothetical.
Yeah, it's a hypothetical sense, because if we have to look at needs, if you take the needs of everyday people, what they need, you measure it up to the election cycle, because in essence, a ministry can only go so far. Meaning, if you vote for a party and a president, versus the actual influence and the actual impact that a local authority has. Meaning, the people who live there are dependent upon the services that local authority
provides.
And we've obviously got this Decentralization Act that I only discovered last year that Namibia has since 2000.
I didn't even know we had a Decentralization Act.
It's now 25 years old now, 2026. It was gazetted in 2000. This Decentralization Act speaks towards how decentralization of development is not just centralized in Windhoek, meaning it's not the ultimate decision of a ministry or a minister here to make decisions for the regions. The regions, with their regional authorities, then implement things where they are. So when I ask that question, it's on the mindset of looking at, we've got this piece of legislation that has been just dormant, it's been sleeping. And if we look at this aspect, there's only so far a president, a minister, a prime minister, and ministries can go to effecting change for people on the ground versus local authorities. Because that local councillor would have more importance than the minister and his executive director, and so forth.
And hopefully more knowledge, because you're on the ground. Hopefully that would be the case. Ideally, that should be the case.
That should be the case, So if on that particular context that I now supplied, do you still believe, it would be feasible or not? Because I'm asking this in a hypothetical scenario, based on all that knowledge that we've got.
Yeah, I think it will be. Because provided that we have the same momentum and understanding of the crucial aspect of the local and regional authority elections.
Yeah.
Because then if it's a thing of we can have, okay, the idea is good, but like, do people still understand the whole importance of it?
Yeah.
Or do they still want, it's still a situation, even if you have the local elections first, the presidential might still have higher momentum compared to...
And obviously there was great appeal by or great appeal into the idea of a first female president for Namibia versus just having a bunch of male candidates obviously on the ballot. So in one sense, I'm not completely saying that people bought into the idea, even though the numbers speak for themselves, the stats, how people turned out. But we obviously had certain shortfalls with the response to the elections of 2024. Which we highlighted a little bit earlier, the shopping for polling stations, the lack of polling stations, and the machinery and so on. The biggest concern obviously was here, where and how will people vote? Because there were a lot of provisions made for people who find themselves outside somewhere or who could not wait so long versus participating in the actual thing that gives them the service. You need water, you need electricity. So that council has to speak to Nampower, ECB, the Norwich, the Senorich, so on and so forth. The biggest concern here is obviously that we have the 50-50 balance of Namibians, urban versus rural, and the potential would be that we will probably see more urban migration in the near future because the 2023 census says it. Based on that as well, would it also be a prudent idea to firstly think about in terms of also trying to swap the two election cycles with each other, so that we know if new towns are going to be probably made because of urban migration, that concerns first have to be met about on the ground versus the national identity or the national policy making direction that we wish to take with a new president.
Yeah, I think we should swap them in an ideal world.
Yeah,
I would love us to swap them because it cannot be a top to bottom approach. It needs to be a bottom to top approach. If not, they will eat the rich. And so I genuinely think that the election that we should be focusing on is regional and local authority elections, because this is the one that that election is the one that genuinely it matters. That's the grassroots election. Will that be the case? I doubt it. I mean, and as Val said, we could swap the elections, but if individuals still do not understand the importance of the election, the importance of service delivery, then
what's the point?
What is the point?
Yeah.
And it's not even to be pessimistic or anything, but genuinely people need to be educated on the importance of these things, or else what's the point of having all of these structures and all of these big fancy words if we do not know what they actually mean? And even when we do know what they mean, how do they manifest? How do they look once manifested?
Yeah.
I would vote that we swap them, but we should swap them with the right amount of education and force and lobbying and advocacy.
There should be a firm foundation.
Yeah, there should be a solid foundation when swapping them.
And the further thing to motivate that particular idea is that I found out also recently that since we've got the two houses of the parliament, National Council and National Assembly.
People don't even know that.
Even that
they do not know.
I know is that the National Council has importance over National Assembly in who approves a law.
Yes.
So the debates can take place in National Assembly where the party leaders are.
Yeah.
But if any law needs to be made,
it goes to the National Council for review.
And they have the last say before anything gets approved.
Yeah.
So even in that scenario, there is already a motivating factor that says National Council has
greater power.
Not greater power, but greater importance.
Yeah.
Because the council represents the various constituencies of the country versus
and the regions
versus the actual party leaders and their party leadership that sits in National Assembly, who debates about other particular subject matter that I might not agree on, but it's not about me. So just in that particular scenario, I know, guys, I promised 30 minutes, but we've actually been going for a good 40 minutes. Just in terms of how the turnout looked for you guys, besides the actual numbers. You know, things like, was there a quick voting period for the voters to react to? The report highlights, that it was not as obviously as crowded as back in 2024 with the long lines and so on, but that the assistance was there and people could vote. So what did it look like for you guys, just for us to end on that particular note?
Yeah. Okay, I think it's bad that the voters turnout was low, but like it's good that like the old people, seeing that they're the ones that turned up the most, they didn't have to stand in those long lines, and so that kind of like is the process compared to 2024. So there was like a good aspect of the low voter turnout.
Okay.
Yeah, it was I just walked in. Like it was so seamless. Just walk in and walk out. It was less than 5 minutes even. Yeah, and we also observed in Rehoboth, and that was the case. You just walk in and you walk out. I mean, there were a lot of issues that I picked up on, like one of the what do they call them? The presiding officers. One of the presiding officers was like clearly from a church. Like, what is the church called? No, those like the churches where you wear like blue dresses and like the white head wrap.
I know.
And she was like in full like church gear and everything, and like greeted us as like, I'm blessed and like praise the Lord and stuff, and that's great, if that's the religion that you subscribe to, that's great. But that even just made me like question this entire thing of a secular state, and the separation between the church and the state,
or religion and the state,
and so it just, there were a lot of things that like I picked up on that obviously made me uncomfortable, like made me question like even the training of the presiding officers and stuff. But other than that, it was a very seamless process. But you asked a question about like the ballot paper versus the EMV machines.
Technology wise.
Yeah. And like, I do not agree with the ballot papers. I've never had the opportunity to like vote on the machine, but even with the ballot papers, we're voting with a pencil. And even when we do civic and voter education and we tell the students that like, okay, you're going to get a ballot paper and you get a pencil, they're like, why am I getting a pencil? Like what if someone come and erases my,
first choice,
my first choice. And then like, the obvious response is like, oh no, but like with an ink, it will spill, and it's like it's a special kind of pencil and it's really strong and you cannot erase it without seeing, like obviously those are the excuses that we give them.
Sounds like a Cambridge exam of 2002 that I took.
But it's just like, I don't think we should be voting with pencil or with ballot paper.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, we are smart, brilliant people in this country. We should find a way to make democracy ours and make voting ours and like unique to the Namibian condition and context. But as long as we keep on like buying into what we think we should be buying into and buying no less even applying all of this Western ideas of like democracy and governance and all of that without personalizing it and understanding and making it ours, will constantly be lost, because there is a way. Like, who says that is the only way that we could vote? Who says that there are only two options? Why can't we find an option that is unique to Namibia, that resonates with us, and like allows the electorate to trust? Because a lot of voter apathy comes from a lack of trust. Like, people just do not trust that anything is going to happen, and like nothing good is going to come from it.
True.
So
Okay, all right.
There's a lot there, but
No, it's 100%. On your side, Valentina, if you still have anything last to add that I might not have asked, and then I'll ask you as well again also.
Yeah, I think the important part of something that the listener can get away with is the fact that it's a cycle. We should not have to end the conversation here regarding elections or just bring it up when we are a year, like a couple of months away from elections. It should be something that we should continue having, I don't know, daily conversation or something. I think it will just also capacitate us with the knowledge on the importance of elections. we shouldn't take it as some form of ritual that should be done every 5 years. Or
Even though it has a ritual element.
It does.
yeah, that's because we have lost the importance of it in the first place.
Yeah.
So if we, like Jacinta said, if you have to start to personalize it, then maybe we'll go somewhere.
And on your side, Jacinta, any last words regarding sort of like looking at this discussion? Something I might not have asked as well.
No, I think it's just that. I think that, like, genuinely for democracy and for governance to work in Namibia, but in Africa, like, at large, we genuinely need to go back to the drawing board and understand what do all of these concepts mean to us, and how do we make them ours. Because as long as you're borrowing and you're just like aimlessly borrowing, you don't even care, then
you're aiming to tick a box.
You're just ticking some type of checklist, then it's never going to work, unfortunately. So we genuinely need to reframe and think long and hard about, like, what do we see the future of this country like to look like what does that look like, and how do we move towards a Namibia that is that, and how do we personalize these things and, like, make them ours, because people are so disconnected, they could really care less. And on the topic of, like, regional and local authority elections, how do we address all of these critical things that, like, our nation is going through? You know, people do not have bread to eat. School just started. A lot of students do not have stationery. They don't even know which school they're going to go to. We do not even have schools to start off with. Like, we have so many issues that we need to tackle. And so how do we do that so that we can give each other a dignified living experience and not just be doing things to tick off a list? Like, can we treat each other like...
Because we are scared of sanctions.
You know, because we are scared of sanctions instead of, like, I want to treat you like the god that you're out to be treated as. So.
I don't think we're on the level of Iran now. Just to let you know. But
let's not push it.
No, let's not push it.
But obviously, since Namibia, we still have to see what 2026 obviously has in store for Namibia. Primarily, to stay away from discussions of lawmaking and the likes. So we obviously have to wait now for the next 5-year cycle. And yes, just to like to thank you guys again for taking the time to talk to our listeners, to me as well. It's first time. Thank you, Jacinta.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Thank you once again, Valentina. And obviously, we'll make a plan, to talk again on another subject, not elections. But thank you once again.
Yeah, thank you. This was nice.
Yeah, this was nice. Thank you for having us.